Bam Adebayo is a two-time gold medalist. But what does that mean for his Miami Heat legacy? We debate that on today's Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your everyday podcast on the Miami Heat, whether you're tuning in on YouTube, Odyssey, or your favorite podcast app. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg. I'm the editor at allyoucanheat.com here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members, and today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Recording this on Sunday, a day after Team USA beat France to win the gold medal. Steph Curry had one of the greatest stretches we've ever seen in Olympic basketball. 60 points and 17 made threes over the final two games against Serbia and France, including 4 in a crucial 2-minute stretch in the fourth quarter to put the gold medal game away. Before we get to Bam Adebayo's impact on the Olympic team and what winning a gold medal means for his Miami Heat legacy, what was your real-time reaction, David, watching Steph doing what he did?
I thought the Wes Goldberg jinx was in full effect. Like I think hours after recording the "Can they be touched? Can anybody challenge them?" They were down 17, and it just looked like they were going to lose that game. Well, that was a Serbia game, right? Too, where they were down 17, and then of course now they were losing to France, and it was crucial. Yeah, it was ridiculous. Double impact there from you. I mean, I don't know. Your powers of jinxing are like growing on an annual basis there. So congrats to you. Watching Steph though, like just ridiculous. Like obviously it was much more of a nail biter than it probably should have been. And kudos to Team France because I mean that's a really good team. They had some tremendous performances there. They understand everything, and at the same time, like USA was just clawing and fighting for everything. Watching Steph hit those shots, I wasn't sure whether or not USA was going to pull out the win there. I thought it was still very much up in the air. Like it was ultimately very close. You saw what the women's national game was on Sunday morning, hours after, we're recording this hour after that game, ended on a 1-point win with a last second shot that was foot on the line. That was a really tough one as well. But, that was unbelievable. Steph, ridiculous. Like what can you say? Like that last shot that he took, where he's like falling away and he kind of just like flings it. Like that wasn't even like set shooting form or anything else. That's just like, I know right now that everything I'm going to put up is going to fall in. And that's exactly what happened. Because that shot, like he was defended by 2 French players. Might be the greatest shot he's ever taken. And that's saying
I was just going to say, no, it is legitimately the best shot he's ever made in his career. It is, with the stakes being what they were, a gold medal game. In a close game, a game where the Team USA was favored by 14.5 points, and yet it's fighting tooth and nail down the stretch of this thing, and he's doing it for America. He's taking that shot. They were France was trapping him with Evan Fournier and usually Yabusele, who was kind of guarding LeBron, and then Team USA would run that LeBron Steph Curry pick and roll kind of game.
After the Colo, right?
And they were trapping Steph, throwing bodies at him, and it just didn't matter. He made 4 straight three-pointers in this 2 minutes. And that last one, the one that you were talking about, Kevin Durant and LeBron James are wide open on the other side of the court. And Steph just basically looks him off and he says, "Don't worry, I got this." Falling away on one leg, hits him with the go to bed. My reaction as it was happening, David, was I was watching it with a friend at a bar in downtown Miami, and the entire bar just erupted. It was, except for like these 3 people who were rooting for France. Like the whole bar just erupted. Everybody just put their hands on their head. I stood up out of my bar stool. I was like, "That's crazy." That's the most. I covered Steph. I have seen Steph. Steve Kerr after the game said, "I keep seeing." Steve Kerr has gotten a front row seat for this more than anybody else has, and he's still blown away by it. And how could you not be? And he just found a way to sort of one up himself. I think you're right. I think it's the best shot he's ever made.
It's hard to kind of qualify them because there's so many, but I mean that was just the degree of difficulty, like you said, the stakes involved, the fact that it looked nothing like even his typical shots. Like other shots in that kind of same barrage, it was the sidestep, the taking the dribble to kind of collect himself, etc. This wasn't that. This was just like, oh, I've got the ball in my hands. Sure, let me just chuck it. And it's absolutely going to splash down. So incredible shot. Just a tremendous run for Team USA. Like, what are your vibes? But we haven't really talked about this, and I know this isn't necessarily Heat related, but just the idea of watching three of the top 10 greatest players in NBA history, and Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, and LeBron James all sharing the floor together. Do you still geek out at these incredible moments? Because we've seen this like very sparingly in all-star games where, of course, the stakes don't matter and it doesn't really feel like much of an exercise. But watching those three guys share the floor, watching Steph and LeBron pick and rolls, or KD and Steph pick and rolls again, like, did you feel excitement at watching that Team USA performance?
I did, especially at the end of that Serbia game, where it was really the three of them sort of rallying together and saying, don't worry, we got this. We're going to come back from 17 points down. And even at the end of this one where, LeBron, he ends up getting Olympics MVP, for the full tournament here. And I thought it was well-deserved, right? Because he was just setting the table the entire time. He never had like the 30-point games like Steph did, but he was just so in control. So seeing LeBron do that with Steph Curry, just from like, first of all, from a basketball nerd perspective, like an X's and O's, the two-man game of LeBron and Steph is just absolutely unstoppable, right? I mean, you can't beat it. And even when you do kind of stop it, Steph does what he does and just shoots it over you anyway, and it doesn't matter, right? When you kind of perfectly time the trap and the double team and all those things, it didn't really matter. And then, seeing those guys come together, I don't know that I would have Kevin Durant top 10 all time, but I know that that's not really the point. It's three of the greatest 20 to 25 players of all time.
Why not top 10?
He doesn't have any championships that count. I'm kidding on that. But I don't know. He doesn't quite crack top 10 for me. And that's not even like a diss to Kevin Durant. I just think like top 10 all time. That seems I don't know. Like
seems
we don't
fair.
have to do the, I mean it's
fair.
it's
like we
LeBron,
kind of take it for granted.
LeBron, Jordan, Bird, Magic, Tim Duncan, Kobe,
Kareem.
Shaq, Kareem.
You see why
Bill
Duncan?
Russell.
Like, this isn't a knock on Duncan. Like, Duncan's a hell of a player, obviously, but why Duncan and not Durant?
First of all,
it's all about the off the court legacy. I think that's the problem. Is Duncan stayed in San Antonio, played his whole career there, won championships there. Again,
his
not
resume's
necessarily
better.
through anything like not
like on the court. Tim Duncan has five championships. Kevin Durant has 2. Tim Duncan is a 3-time Tim Duncan is a 3-time Finals MVP. Durant has 2. Tim Duncan is a 2-time NBA MVP. Durant is 1. He's been to 15 All-Star games. Durant is probably close to that, or will be by the time he finished. 10-time All NBA first team. Like his resume, like people just think that Tim Duncan was like this fundamental, just sort of guy on a winning team. No, the resume is ridiculous. I mean, it's he stuffed the box score when it comes to the resume, and I just think that Durant doesn't come close to that. So Tim Duncan to me is in pen top 10 all time. Like that's a non-negotiable to me. Tim Duncan is top 10 all time.
That's fair.
You can argue other people, but anyway, the point being, in terms of your original question, in terms of the vibes are immaculate. The vibes are crazy, and I made this point with Kevin Durant. It's really cool seeing him on this stage, and I do think that despite like the off-the-court stuff that you mentioned with Kevin Durant, where he's kind of the greatest superstar ever without a home, right? Like Oklahoma City, never won a championship, left on rocky terms. The Golden State Warriors thing, it never really felt like his team, and he left for a reason. Brooklyn, like that obviously didn't work out, and there's not a huge fan base there anyway. And then, like the Phoenix stuff thing is still TBD. But Team USA, if anything, is Kevin Durant's team. He's a 4-time gold medalist. No men's basketball player ever has 4 gold medals other than Kevin Durant. He's the only one. And so, even LeBron has 4 medals. One of them is a bronze, right? So Durant has 4 gold. He is the all-time leading scorer in men and women's Team USA history. Team USA is Kevin Durant's team, right? And I think he should go into the Hall of Fame with a Team USA jersey. Because I think it's a fair question to be like, when he's in the Hall of Fame, what do you consider Kevin Durant? Do you consider him a Thunder, a Warrior, a Net, a Sun? Nobody. He's a player without a jersey. He has no home except for Team USA, right? Like when I think of Kevin Durant, we might just be thinking about Team USA when it's all said. So anyway, I love watching him, LeBron, and Steph do this because I think it's also going to be all three of their last chances probably to play for something meaningful. And for them to have done it together when their careers were sort of all intertwined and against each other, and so much of it was related of and headlined that generation, for them to kind of do it all together at the very end was really cool. That said, Bam Adebayo is going to get another banner at Kaseya Center, and he's continuing to move up the rankings of all-time players in Heat history. I'll tell you where I have him right now. Might be a little surprising to people. We'll talk about that after this.
Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your car alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers to roof racks, exhaust kits to LED headlights, and so much more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions do apply, and eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. We'll be right back.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On NBA podcast. There's no offseason in the NBA, and Locked On NBA provides daily basketball analysis from national and local experts in 30 minutes or less. No one keeps you as informed and entertained as Locked On NBA. Available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I got a couple of BAM-related questions that we want to get to here. David, I'm going to ask you who Bam Adebayo is in the group of the Avengers. Talk about that later on. And I also want to ask you whether or not you think he's a shoo-in to be on the Olympic team 4 years from now when we're playing in Los Angeles. So we'll get to that here in a second. But he's going to get a second banner now at Kaseya Center. So the Miami Heat, for those who don't know, they raise banners for everybody who has a gold medal, who has, championships, all these things, but also Dwayne Wade, LeBron James, Bam Adebayo already has a banner. He's about to get a second banner. And that's important.
Tim Hardaway, Alonzo Mourning.
Tim Hardaway and Alonzo Mourning. Yeah. So you look at the resume Bam is putting together here, and I think it's fair to wonder now where he is, like all-time Heat players. So I'll get to that here in a second, but I'm just going to read you the resume. So two-time gold medal, more than any other Miami Heat player has, right? He is now the franchise leader in gold medals owned. Three-time All-Star, five-time All-Defensive Team, one time on the first team, which was last year. Fifth all-time in franchise history in rebounds already. Fifth already in points, which I think would surprise a lot of people. Seventh all-time in assists in Heat history. And fifth already in games played. I mean, this guy is moving up the rankings. And I did the math on this. If he basically just scores at the rate that he's been scoring over the last few years of his prime, he's going to he's going to be the second scorer in Heat history in 2 seasons. Second leading scorer in Heat history in 2 seasons before he's 30 years old. I think so. To me, I think it's Wade, obviously number one. I would put Wade, LeBron, Alonzo Mourning, Udonis Haslem, Jimmy Butler. To me, that's the top 5 players in Heat history. I would probably have Bam right there. I would have him over Chris Bosh all time already. And I would have him, I think I would probably also have him over Jimmy Butler. I think I might have him over Jimmy Butler based on what his resume is with the Miami Heat. So to me, it's untouchable Wade, LeBron, Zoe, Haslem for now. But I think Bam could be, when it's all said and done, and if he finishes his career with Miami, could be behind only Wade and maybe LeBron in terms of the greatest players in Heat history. And you could make the case that if he wins a couple of championships, he would be over LeBron in terms of Heat history. What do you think?
That's a tough one. That is a really difficult one. I
In
think
terms of where he is now, instead of we'll project forward in a second, but like where is he now? Would you agree with me? It's like Wade, LeBron, Zoe, Haslam, probably Jimmy Butler, all over Bam, and I would have him over Chris
yes.
Bosh, and then
No,
everybody
not,
basically
not
else.
probably.
Okay.
Like, this is somewhat revisionist. Like, I mean, following the Orlando bubble, I think I remember recording with Rowan Notcarney and like talking about the having him already almost in the Mount Rushmore. Like he was that good, and that was his first season. And just, I mean, we're kind of like, it happens with everybody. It happens with every kind of NBA narrative and life in general. Like as time passes, the glow of that moment is kind of washed over. But I think to not have Jimmy, like at this point, honestly, I think Jimmy is an all-time better Heat player than Alonzo Mourning, and I don't think that's
Really?
debatable. Oh yeah, like
5 All-Star games,
Alonzo.
2-time Defensive Player of the Year. He did win a ring. Alonzo got the ring in 2006. That to me is what put him over a little. I don't know. It's tough. Jimmy Butler is singularly better than Alonzo Mourning, but the resume for Zoe is hefty.
Yeah, but okay, I mean, it's like this is, and we've had this debate. I don't know how many dozens of times over the years of podcasting together. Like when it comes to MVP voting or All-Star voting or All NBA voting, it's like so much of individual success is unfairly tied to like team success. Like you were just making the point about Tim Duncan. One thing Tim Duncan had that Kevin Durant never had was Greg goddamn Popovich, not to mention 2 other Hall of Famers in Manu Ginobili and Tony Parker. So that's something. And you could say, of course, they had Russell Westbrook, but their styles didn't exactly work together. And I think we're starting to see
but even
in the twilight of Westbrook's career why.
But like Jimmy Butler,
like Alonzo, look, man, I'm not knocking Alonzo.
Okay, go ahead.
I know I'm not knocking him. It's just like Alonzo was a really great defensive player in his prime here, and I mean I watched those games. I mean, you want to come and debate anybody to our listenership or anything like that. I saw those games. I saw the Miami Heat during that era. Alonzo was really, really good, but even amongst the top centers of the game, he was well below in that list. Like you had Shaquille O'Neal, you had David Robinson in his prime, you had Tim Duncan going into that prime, you had a lot of guys, Patrick Ewing, Hakeem Olajuwon, and on and on and on. The list of centers at that point in time was a really, really deep one. And again, not a knock on Alonzo. I think he was just mostly an incredible defensive player that wound up having to carry the scoring load for that team. I think that he would have probably in today's game, I think he would have enjoyed more of a role like Bam Adebayo, where he was more of a complimentary player who you could just throw out there and just say, do what you do, defend the hell out of that team, and then make it work. And then, yes, he could
to your
score,
point, Bam has kind of been thrust into the very similar thing that Alonzo Mourning was thrust into. I mean, you look at Alonzo Mourning's stats during that stretch in the 90s, late 90s, he was 20 points per game, 10 rebounds, 3 blocks, right? And I think you're right when you're saying he was probably a little overtaxed in terms of the scoring load that was put on him. But you would say the thing about Bam, wouldn't you? You would say, yeah, they're probably relying him on like too much at this point for scoring. I don't know. I didn't mean we don't need to turn this into an Alonzo Mourning versus Jimmy Butler thing, but I do think it's kind of funny. Like
no. I'm just
Jimmy Butler.
You have to break it down though, because you can't put the context of what Bam has done without kind of breaking down the context of what these other players done. And again, like we're talking about UD, like UD, again, incredible player, the lifeblood of this team for over a decade, almost 2 decades, really. And then just everything he means to the city and everything else. But you look at his career and everything he's done, like, I mean, he was a good player and he wasn't a great player. I mean, he was a good NBA player, which makes you a great player overall. But like, he's like, Bam Adebayo is clearly a better player than Udonis ever was. And I don't think that's debatable. And so I think you have to look at the entire breadth of what he's done over the course of his 20-year career. Fine, Udonis is a great player and somebody you really appreciate, and Bam is still a better player. So like, if anybody, I think eventually Bam is going to be able to unseat UD. I think he's going to be able to unseat Zoe.
Yeah.
And I think Jimmy gets in there. If you're looking at the team's Mount Rushmore, and I know a lot of people have turned on Jimmy Butler and everything else, but I cannot separate the magic of what we saw from him and those playoff runs when they went to the Eastern Conference Finals a couple years ago, when they went to the finals 2 years ago, and of course during the bubble run, like watching him carry those teams and do what that he did, like that was just a transcendent individual performance, which will automatically,
So he's on.
in
So
my
you have your
eyes,
Mount Rushmore
anyway,
then.
put him amongst the top 4 or 5 players in NBA Heat history. But of Wade, and I think LeBron deserves it, despite the fact that it was a short stint. Again, best individual player on the planet during that 4-year stretch.
Two championships.
He
The
clearly
only
has
Heat,
to be on there.
only Heat player to ever win league MVP. Right? Like the resume, it was short, but it was it was everything in that short. He accomplished more in a short period of time than any Heat player ever has. Right? With other than Dwayne Wade, obviously. So, go ahead.
Yeah.
So I've got I've got Wade, I've got LeBron, Alonzo Mourning, and Jimmy Butler. That's your Mount Rushmore, if I'm following you.
Yeah, for now.
Okay. I think I'm probably lower on Jimmy Butler. The playoff performances are historic.
We all know that.
Well, I know, I guess, but like you just look at I understand like you want to try to separate like team success and all these things, but like at the end of the day, a resume is a resume, and like that's what we have. We're talking about a guy who went to 2 All-Star games in a Heat jersey, right? Never finished top 5 in MVP voting.
His choice, right?
Was sure his choice, but like that's part of it, right? Like the resume is the resume. So the guy goes to 2 All-Star games. His career averages in Miami are basically the same. I mean, they're not as good as Alonzo Mourning's. Like he's 21, 6, and 5 for his career. Alonzo Mourning is 20, 10, and 3 blocks. Right? Like you could argue maybe they're the same, even from a scoring perspective. So I just think, and I know I'm separating the playoff stuff out of it. I'm talking about regular season stuff here. Yeah. Like to me, Jimmy Butler, what he did in the playoffs is bar none historic, all-time magical Miami Heat stuff. And he deserves to be on this list. And I still probably have him. That's why I probably still have him high up on my list. But I don't know that I would go like easily over Alonzo Mourning or even Udonis Haslem, just considering everything that those guys did for their careers in Miami. But the point being with Bam Adebayo here.
What's the argument for UD? What's the argument for UD?
3 championships, all-time leader in rebounds for the franchise.
Come on. 3 championships? Okay. All right. Look, I get it. You can't tell people how to fan. And I love UD, all-time favorite, one of my all-time favorite players in the Heat uniform. But I mean, come on. Let's separate the reality here from the vibes. Like the vibes are great. Vibes are immaculate, sure. But like, a winner, it helps when your teammates are LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Jimmy Butler. Like, I mean, and Chris Bosh. Like that sure helps. Like he was, and Shaquille O'Neal. This is a big part of UD's winning. Like, I mean, UD could have been.
It's fair.
It's Nick Collison.
But you said it before. You said it before. Bam is probably going to go ahead of Udonis Haslem. So I have Bam in this zone right now. You and I probably have him somewhere in our top 5-ish, and I think he's moving over.
What about CB? Like we're kind of discounting what CB done.
I would put Bam over Chris Bosh at this point, just because of where where Bam's numbers are and what he's accomplished and all these things. I think Bam is probably over Bosh. Yeah. Which I know I'm doing the whole double standard thing here because Bosh has 2 championships, and I guess I'm not counting those, and Haslem has 3. So I don't know. You could find incongruencies with my arguments all over the place, and I admit that fully. But I don't know. The point being is that Bam is going to be the second in franchise history in 2 years in scoring, which is crazy because we don't think about Bam as a scorer. He's 7th in assists. He's a center. Like this guy is moving up the rankings fast, and it's not just like the all-time where he ranks Heat leadership stuff. It's also 2-time gold medal, the All-Stars, the all-defensive teams. If this guy wins 1 championship in a Heat uniform, I mean, it's going to be really hard to, when it's all said and done, rank him below anybody else other than Dwayne Wade. Like that's at least that's the track he is on. And I thought it was just, on the heels of this Team USA experience, I just thought it was good to kind of revisit the context and kind of look at it through that kind of lens here, because
in a bigger picture kind of thing.
Yeah.
In a bigger picture, like how close is he to the Hall of Fame? And I know some people want to say, "Oh, everybody gets in the Hall of Fame," which I think that's not true. First of all, I think maybe it's a little bit more generous in some standards.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think baseball is too strict. Like, I mean, you can't have like guys that were like, again, transcendent generational players of baseball and be like, well, I didn't like the way they batted, or I didn't like some ridiculous like, on base percentage or something like that is going to keep them out of the league. So, these guys were great players. When it comes to basketball, I think Bam, like, and this is such an interesting argument because, we've talked to so many fans that are like, even in our comments, and I'm sure we'll get some today, like, Bam sucks, Bam's overrated, Bam's like a garbage player, or like he's a role player at best. It's like, this is a role player that could very well find himself with a Hall of Fame career. So I don't know how you equate those in your heads. But I think he's getting closer. Like, he's gonna need one champ. If Ben Wallace can be a Hall of Fame player, and I know he's got the hardware, but I mean, we've debated why Bam doesn't have the hardware, and it's probably unfair, and he should. Like, aside from the championship he won with the Detroit Pistons as a role player, I mean, he's got the Defensive Player of the Year awards in Wallace's case. But Bam, I mean, he's got a better all-star case. He's been a more productive player by far over the course of his career in terms of his scoring and assist numbers and everything else like that. Like, and now 2 gold medals. Like, this is a guy who's knocking on the door of Springfield, Massachusetts. And I think it's a good case. Like, I think he probably needs one championship, a couple more all-star games under his belt, and perhaps one seminal individual award, maybe Defensive Player of the Year or something like that. And if he gets that done, I think he's a lock.
Basketball Reference has it at 0.8% right now in terms of his Hall of Fame probability. So
That's not great.
It's not awesome. But remember, it's not the NBA Hall of Fame, it's the Basketball Hall of Fame. And Bam didn't do anything in his 8 months in Kentucky, but he's got 2 gold medals, and that counts. Like, Patty Mills might make the Basketball Hall of Fame because of what his international record is, right? For Australia. Like, we're talking
as a boomer,
about,
yeah.
And he's a 2-time NBA championship with the Spurs. So it's the Basketball Hall of Fame, and that's always important to keep in mind here. It's not the NBA Hall of Fame. So having the 2 gold medals is the hardware. I do think he needs more. I think he needs a championship, a Defensive Player of the Year, something like that to get him in to the Hall of Fame. But his career is so far from over. So I think he's on track for all of it. I think he's on track to be the second greatest Heat player of all time, and I think he's on track to have a pretty strong argument maybe to one day make the Hall of Fame. But
does he represent
still more work to be done.
The USA in 2028 in Los Angeles?
We'll answer that after this. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. If you're new to us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. You can also follow us on your favorite podcast app. So, 2028, Los Angeles Olympic Games. Bam Adebayo, 2-time gold medalist. I think he is a lock, if he wants it, to be on Team USA. That is his status with the team. That is his status with Steve Kerr and Eric Spoelstra and Grant Hill. They look at Bam Adebayo as a foundational piece to Team USA. Now, if you're a fan of another team, you can argue that until the sun comes up and goes back down again. I don't care. It's just a fact. This is what we're looking at. The guy got minutes in every single game during this Olympic run. They love him. They rely on him. I think Bam Adebayo is maybe the league's next Drew Holiday in terms of every coach's favorite player in the league. Like a player that every team would love to have. And so to me, I'm looking at 2028. You gotta go with the incumbents, right? So I'm assuming no Steph, no LeBron, no Kevin Durant, even though LeBron, who knows, I guess. But Devin Booker, Anthony Edwards, Jason Tatum, Tyrese Halliburton, Kevin Durant. I've got Devin Booker, Anthony Edwards, Jason Tatum, Tyrese Halliburton, Anthony Davis, and Bam Adebayo in terms of the guys that were on this team who, if they want to be there in 2028, they'll be there. So that's 6 guys. I think Jalen Brunson, Paolo Banchero, Chet Holmgren. I think Derek White also is an incumbent who might have a chance there. I think J-Dub from Oklahoma City, Jaylen Brown. Maybe that bridge isn't completely burned down. Donovan Mitchell, De'Aaron Fox, Tyrese Maxey, John Morant, if things kind of straighten out for him a little bit more. I think Cooper Flagg coming into the draft next year. He'll be 3 years into his career at that point. And if he's sort of the generational guy that people think he is, he'll be 3 years into his NBA career. He'll have a case. So that's That to me is a list. But do you think Bam is? Do you agree with me? Bam in Penn?
Yeah, I think Bam for sure. I don't know that AD is likely to do it again, especially if LeBron's not there.
That's the tough one.
So I
Anthony
think,
Davis is 31 years old, so he'll be 34-ish at that point. That could go either way.
yeah, and it seems Embiid's already kind of hedging his bets, and he says
Yeah.
whether it's with Team USA or Cameroon, who knows? So he's already he seems like he's already got one foot out the door anyway. So I would think that Bam absolutely does it. Like again, it's just if for nothing else, it will continue to add to his legacy. I think he loves these performances. I think he loves these games, and he thrives in them. He does, as you said, he does such a great job doing all the other things where he doesn't have to take on such a huge part of the offensive burden, and he can just go ahead and impact the game in so many different ways. And he did over the course of their gold medal run. So to me, I think he would absolutely be in there. I think he'd probably be your starting center going forward. Like I think he's probably that much that he's that penciled in, and I think I would have him over Chet Holmgren too, just in terms of what FIBA style play is. Like Holmgren is just he's not physical enough. He's not as dominant enough as Victor Wembanyama is, nor does he space the floor as effectively as Wembanyama does. And at the same time, you know, Adebayo's physicality and his overall skill level and everything else just kind of puts him a little bit over Chet. That's not to say that Chet can't evolve over the next 4 years and eventually he'll be that player, but I think I'd have Adebayo as a lock and Chet is kind of in pencil, certainly a representative for Team USA. And who knows?
You could play Chet.
Like
you could play Chet with Bam Adebayo. By the way,
4 years ago,
like if Chet's going to play with Isaiah Hartenstein in Oklahoma City, like we might be talking about Chet as a power forward more so than a center. So and they would work, and I think I disagree. I think Chet is probably a better floor spacer at this point than Victor Wembanyama, and he could certainly shoot the three better than Bam Adebayo. So you could play those guys together. Again, the Anthony Davis part is a little bit of a wild card, but yeah, I think Bam has a he's in Penn, and he's got a great shot at maybe starting on this team with Devin Booker, Anthony Edwards, Tyrese Halliburton, Jason Tatum, Bam Adebayo. That might be your starting five, in 2028. So, all right, last thing here. This has been making the rounds on the internet, David. So LeBron James was asked, okay, we had the Dream Team, we had the Redeem Team. What do you call the 2024 Team USA? And he said the Avengers. So somebody went on social media and assigned different members of the Avengers with different members of Team USA. For those watching on YouTube, you can obviously see the graphic on the screen. For those on the audio, they have LeBron James casted as Captain America. Steph Curry is Iron Man because he's beloved. Kevin Durant is Thor because he's his own man. Joel Embiid is the Hulk, unpredictable yet dominant. Devin Booker is Hawkeye, a knockdown shooter. Anthony Edwards is the Black Panther because of his swag. Drew Holiday is Spider-Man, active hands. I like that one. Anthony Davis is Vision because of his unibrow. You're going to have to explain some of these to me, by the way. Yeah, Bam Adebayo is War Machine, strong inside presence. Halliburton is Doctor Strange because he's a facilitator. Jason Tatum is Falcon, lands big role after Avengers Assemble. And then Derek White is Star-Lord, human yet very valuable. So I want just you very quickly here because we don't have a ton of time. But is there anything that you disagree with or like strongly agree with here?
I could see the Braun Captain America thing. I think that's a good combination there. I'm not sure about the Hulk. Embiid just wasn't very dominant, so he just wasn't enough of a factor really to make him out there. Like you can't just kind of. I in the same sense, like
he was the Hulk before Mark Ruffalo transformed, right?
He's such a loose cannon. That's the thing. Like the character of the Hulk is such a loose cannon that you could put him out there and he could easily win things for you or lose things for you because he's just so erratic. You can't control him. So maybe in that sense, it kind of is spot on. War Machine to me is like such a minor character in the whole Avengers universe. Like this is not. Don Cheadle, who plays him in the movies, is one thing, but like the character itself, he's basically just like he's Tony Stark's friend. And when Tony Stark is on the comic book, when Tony Stark's alcoholism keeps him from being Iron Man, he says, "Dude, fill in for me because I'm just too boozed up right now to go flying around in this expensive suit, blasting people that I might not be seeing right. I might be seeing double and going out into battle, so smelling of Jack Daniels. So you wear the suit for me for a couple of years, and that's basically what happened. So I like it's a minor character there. I don't.
It kind of fits.
I guess like it's knocking Bam a little bit.
Is it?
I guess
it's like he's valuable. right?
bit.
He's valuable to the story, and he's
I
important, and
suppose.
he's like everybody's best friend, but he's not the guy that's going out there and hanging 30 points
If
on
you're gonna
everybody.
have, if you're gonna have, if you're gonna have Steph as Iron Man, and then you're gonna basically have Bam as Iron Man's replacement, I don't know that that exactly works out. That's where I disagree with her. But I could
Hmm.
see the kind of minor character there a little bit. But yeah,
Who
I
would
don't
you
know.
have
I guess it
casted Bam
works to a
as? Do
certain
you have a
extent.
better?
No, they pretty much took everybody there. I think he's just a fill in the role kind of guy. Somebody who he wasn't utilized properly in the movies. Like basically, his big achievement was falling and breaking his back. So I kind of took him out as far as being a central character in the Avengers movies. But other than that, yeah, I don't think he really did much. But I guess you could kind of look at Bam's role on Team USA and say it was the same thing. Although I'd rather put Jason Tatum in that role. Like he's just out there and it really doesn't do much.
Does Jason Tatum even? I mean, Jason Tatum is somebody called Falcon, who I
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
know who he is.
he's
So
Falcon. Yeah, Falcon, who winds up filling in for Falcon is the new Captain America now. If you haven't been following along in the MC universe, so it's that's a big role. I don't know that Jason Tatum is going to be filling in for LeBron James anytime soon, but we'll see.
thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube, and follow us on your favorite podcast app.